There we go. Okay, so we are here today, a conversation with myself. It's Ian Campbell, the president of London TFC Academy, and Bill Manning, who, when we go up the food chain a couple of levels, go to MLS and Toronto FC, he is the president of Toronto FC. And some of you may not know this. Before just a little introduction to Bill. Prior to being a soccer guru, he has been involved in the NBA with the Houston Rockets, the NFL with the Philadelphia Eagles. He also, prior to taking Toronto FC to a championship, actually took Real Salt Lake to a championship back in 2009. They were also CONCACAF runners-up. He helped them build a stadium, much like the expansion that we've seen here locally. So on behalf of everybody on the call today, Bill, thank you for joining us.
Great. Thank you, Ian. Happy to be here. And this is my first Zoom call ever. So I downloaded the app today. So happy to be a part of it. And we're really happy and proud of our relationship and our affiliation with London TFC.
Sounds great. Okay, so we're going to jump right in here. Question number one. You've been involved in a lot of different kinds of sports management, football, basketball, soccer. How is what you're doing now the same or different than professional sports across North America?
You know, it's very, very similar. And you're seeing a lot of ownership groups that are multi-team. You know, a number of teams in MLS, Atlanta, New England, Colorado, have NFL ownerships. Colorado has an NBA team as well. Los Angeles has an NHL team as well. So the sports are run very similar. As an ex-player, though, soccer for me, you know, I can get involved on and you know, oversee the team side, and so that's the fun part and the stressful part at the same time. And that's, you know, when I worked in the NFL and the NBA, I worked on the business part to really fine-tune my business skills and to learn more about how to run that side of the organization. And then now I get to oversee both sides. And that's the fun part about soccer, is that I can use my experience and my passion for the sport to good use.
But when you showed up in Toronto, you were the new guy, and it looks here like you maybe weren't having such a good day. Obviously there's obstacles. I mean, you would have shown up to a new staff. You were the new guy. You were coming out of a successful franchise that Toronto FC had met on the field, and people had high hopes. And so coming in as the new guy, how did you deal with that?
You know, I think I'd had several experiences coming in as a new senior executive and a new president. You know, prior in the minor leagues, I worked for a team called the Minnesota Thunder, which is actually Minnesota United now. And there was a Tampa franchise in MLS, and then I came in as a team president to Real Salt Lake, and they already had kind of an existing staff. And I've kind of come up with my own theory on this. I think there is, I call it a 25-50-25 rule. And, you know, originally 25% of the people are going to be on board with you right from the start because you're the new boss. And then there's 50% of the people are waiting to see your actions and who you are as a person and your character and your experience and your intellect. And they generally can be won over. And then there's 25% of the staff who don't like change, and you represent change, and they're the toughest to get on board. And, you know, it takes a while. Every now and then you'll get someone that just can never get on board. I've generally won most over. Most people have worked for me and my staff. And here in Toronto was actually, it was good because once we started really winning and people could see the direction we were going, everyone jumped on board, and we have a really good staff. You know, I'm very proud of the group that we've had. I'm happy some people have moved on to even bigger opportunities, and it's been a good run here. So I'm really, but it takes a bit. It takes a bit, and what what I try never to do is come in and just, I know everything and I know what to do, because every market's different. I've lived in a lot of different markets, and what worked in Salt Lake doesn't necessarily work here in Toronto. It's a big
Right.
city, and I'm from New York, and so I'm used to a big city. What worked in the NFL doesn't necessarily work in MLS, and so you really need to fine tune. And one thing, when you get up into your into your 50s, you've had experience, and the experiences I've had have really helped shape me. And the most important thing that I found at the end of the day is the team itself. And that I think when people here at Toronto FC learn that I care about winning, and that is the number one goal, and everything else revolves around that, we kind of we all aligned behind that.
So kind of following onto a question, is that what your view looked like when you showed up, or was the construction already underway?
It was underway. Yeah, the construction was underway. It wasn't completed when I first started. That's a beautiful view too. But it's been fabulous. The addition that they did for BMO Field, it's allowed us to have crowds up to 35,000 at some point. When we had the Winter Classic there, and the CFL Grey Cup, and TFC was competing in MLS playoffs and CONCACAF, and it's allowed us to have these crowds now. We're averaging 25, 26,000 every single game that we couldn't back then with the smaller stadium. So, I'm hoping that with World Cup 26 coming, that, we'll be able to be a team that can move up to a 40,000 seat stadium. And, what you see in Atlanta and Seattle, I don't think there's any reason why we can't be doing that here in Toronto.
How did the strategy change after the 2017 win? I mean, to be frank, we kind of had the same problem with our FC London club, in that in 2012 we were PDL North American champions, and now here we are in League One. We've won the women's side, we've won the men's side, and you sort of scratch your head and go, okay, where do we go from here? So, the big prize, of course, being the 2017 MLS championship and doing the treble that year. How do you reset the path for a club who's already now been there, done that?
It's interesting. I worked for a guy in Philadelphia. He was the team president at the time. His name was Joe Banner. And I remember when I interviewed with him, the Eagles had been to 3 consecutive Eastern Conference championships, and they had a lot of success. And he said, look, the hardest part is actually staying there. The easy part's getting there. And, and it really dawned on me, the hardest part is actually doing it over and over again, where you're competing for a championship or in the championship game or in the conference championships. And the Eagles wound up going to the conference championship again my first year, 4th year in a row, and they went to the Super Bowl and lost. But I'm very proud that 3 out of the last 4 years we've been able to get to MLS Cup final. This past year, we had to rework the team a bit after the 2018 season, and about halfway through the season, we put the final pieces together, especially with Omar Gonzalez, and it worked. And that is something that, to continue with our priority, which is to win. That is, everything in our organization revolves around winning and staying at the top. And we're going to do everything we can to do so. I just got off the phone with one of our players, and we're having meals delivered to our players right now. And he was so appreciative. He says, I'm talking to other guys around the league, and other teams aren't doing that. And I just said, hey, we just want to make sure you're in a good place, so that when you come back, you can help us win more games. And just every little thing we do is about winning. And it's not easy. It's not easy. So you kind of, I find fine tuning is much better than overhauling, but the strategy is always about winning.
Got it. Now, you came in at the end of the Bloody Big Deal era, that then went into the Giovinco era, and now the Pozuelo era. Obviously, building a team on and off the field is key. Are there any strategies that you use to do that?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in continuity. And even if you look at this team, 2016 to 17 and 18, we transitioned a bit from 18 to 19, but there's still a solid core group of players that have been with the organization. Marky Delgado in that picture there. Liam Frazier, joined us in 2017. Michael Bradley, Josie Altador, Justin Morrow, down the line, Alex Bono, the number of Jonathan Osorio, key players for us who have been part of this run. And then we've what I like to say, we always fine tune. So Pozuelo was, a player obviously transitioning from Juvenco, and he came in and was the best 11 player and fit the culture of our team. So I always like to look at, from a team standpoint, rarely does an overhaul work. And that's usually when a team is just very bad and there's constant overhauls. I think it was really TFC 2007 through 2014 and even 15 was a lot of change. And what, from a team standpoint, I'm a big believer in continuity. And even when I came in, a lot of people wanted us to get rid of Greg Banny and even Tim Bez at that point. And the last thing we needed was to change. And so this past year, we've brought back 92% of the minutes played on our team from a year ago. And that just goes to show that, in 2018 to 19, I think it was about 82%. But this year, 92% of our minutes returned. And so it's really important. And I think, look, when we get back to playing, I think it's going to work to our advantage because we're a group of players that know each other. And a lot of other teams went through changes this past year, and I think it's going to help us when we get back to playing. Uh-oh. I lost you.
Sorry about that. As you guys are owned by Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, the word entertainment is in there because people are paying money to show up to be entertained. I'm probably in that crowd there somewhere. And as are a lot of people on the phone, and it is entertaining. And how do you keep that up? I mean, you guys have gone and built a culture in Toronto where going to a Toronto FC game it's a big deal. And but keeping that up year over year, things like the national anthem singer and the fireworks and the participation of local clubs as ball kids. I mean, those are all things that engage the community. Is there a bit of a playbook that you guys run to?
Not necessarily. There's really two things. And I love your scarf that you have on, Ian. And I'm just looking at this picture, and it's such a great picture. There's a few of them that have the words are in the wrong direction. The scarves are upside down, but there's an MLS Cup banner in there, and there's obviously the All for One, which is our slogan, and TFC. That's a great picture. I think that Toronto FC has always had good fanfare and good fan support, even in the early years. But it did start to wane a bit in 2013 and 14, and I think that's why our company had to go out and really make an investment on the player side. And when they brought in Jermaine Defoe, and Gilberto, and Michael Bradley, and then that became Sebastian Juvenco and Josie Altador, I think the people in Toronto and the fan base saw a real commitment there to win and to be the best. And I think we've continued in that fashion. Alejandro Pozuelo was one of the largest transfers in MLS history, and he's delivered. And so for me, it's really important that you put out a product, and the product meaning our games and our team, that makes them proud and makes them leave the stadium feeling really good about their hometown team. And fans always go home much happier when you win, and that goes back to our first priority, which is winning. And so I think that's the most important thing for us, for our fan base. The second thing I've learned over all these years is many times it's just organic. I really love that our fans have their own way of enjoying this team. It's very knowledgeable. crowd, especially in the South End, where the supporters groups are. They bring it every single game, and they bring the atmosphere, and they bring kind of the rhythm to the game, and our players love it. And that's something I don't want to change. And so we just kind of keep our hands back, and we let it go organically. And it's, there's a few traditions. We have kind of a pregame song and a postgame song, and those things have worked out. Obviously they sing Danny Dicchio in the 24th minute. But we just let it organically. And then I'm a big believer in customer service. And so all of our fan service reps, we try to be, as friendly and as accommodating as possible, and just allow people to enjoy Toronto FC how they want to enjoy it. And,
well, it's interesting. As a season ticket holder, I love the fact that when I leave the stadium, I'm presented with an 80s song called "You Just Can't Get Enough."
Yeah,
and it's great because obviously that's how you want people to leave the stadium.
Yeah.
You talked about the fans in the South End, and I think there's a bit of a yin and yang here, because on one hand you've got corporate sponsors who are paying you guys big money to have their brand associated with Toronto FC. And yet on the other hand, you've got ones who probably aren't that concerned about the corporate sponsorship, but they've got passion for the game. And how do you weigh that? I mean, how do you on one hand deal with someone in a suit who's giving you money to increase their brand, but on the other hand, someone who just wants to be passionate about being involved?
Yeah, it's a fine balance. I'm just looking at this picture. I know a few guys in this picture. There's one guy with the original 109, George, has told me he's never carried a flare. So he's clearly lying to me there. And that's it's interesting because this is an interesting picture. It's one of those things where obviously it looks great, but the flares have been dangerous. And we had an incident in Ottawa, and, certainly we've curtailed that. And right now, I think they get it in terms of maybe it could get a little out of hand. But the one thing we've always asked from all the groups in the South End and 109 here is the passion that they bring is fantastic. And please don't ever lose that. And you can still bring the same passion without a flare in your hand. And I think this is on the march to the stadium and how they come to the games.
That's right.
And it's balancing that, because then you have, the corporations that actually want to engage with our fans, and they want our fans to, engage with their products or services, whatever it is they're providing, because that same passion that they see for TFC, they want to try to elicit, right? And so it's something where I think we've done a good job of integrating our sponsors with TFC without going over the top. And, our scores, when we do surveys and when our sponsors do surveys amongst our fan base, the identification is really strong, especially when you look at like a BMO and so on, about who they identify with as in the banking industry with their favorite team. And so it's just trying to find the right balance between being respectful to your fans, but also, knowing that the corporate sponsorship world is a big world, and we are a marketing platform. And so, that is a good part of our revenue base. And so we try to really balance that. But these, the passion these folks are showing in that picture is exactly what our sponsors want.
That's right. And again, we talked about building the team, obviously bringing in Pozuelo Javenko from the other side of the pond is one strategy, but bringing homegrown players to the field is another strategy. You've got some strong players not only playing on the field in the starting 11, you've also got some who have been involved with your academy program moving up. Ontario Soccer now with their OPDL initiatives. I know you guys have been involved as a sponsor at the OPDL level. And maybe not short term, but maybe medium term. Do you see that starting to make a difference with your player selection?
Yeah. When I got into the market, the relationship with Ontario Soccer wasn't great. And one of the challenges I think we had with past TFC was they operated a bit in a silo, and we're just part of the soccer ecosystem actually in Ontario, where the highest level of play in Ontario, and then the Canadian national team is above us. That's a big, one of the big parts of our strategy and goals is to have as many Toronto FC players playing for the national team and here in Canada. But Ontario Soccer is really important, and I felt it was important that we put some money back into Ontario Soccer for the development of players, and obviously our number one goal is to try to develop players here in Ontario that could eventually suit up for TFC. And so that's why we sponsored Ontario Soccer, and in particular the OPDL. It's a very important investment for us, and we try to make sure that people know we are not on an island by ourselves. We're part of this ecosystem. And so it's part of the reason we did the affiliations in London and Windsor and Ottawa. And one of the things that we're really excited about, and I say this, is we have Toronto FC Academy, which is made up of 99.9% of Canadians, other than my son and Greg Banny's son. But it is going to be a huge part of our future. And we are only at the tip of the iceberg right now. I was just looking at my phone at all the players we had brought down to training camp. We brought 44 or 42 players to training camp this year, and I think it was 13 or 14 of them were from the GTA here in Canada that came up through our academy, and a number of them are signed to first team contracts right now. And even one, Richie Laria, who came back to us, he was in Orlando. He's a local kid playing a lot of minutes for us. Liam Fraser's obviously played a lot. Jonathan is, the number one guy in terms of being from Toronto and playing, and how he can, what a role model he is for future kids. And so I think we at least can stand up, and I think actually we're still a little early in this, but my goal is 3, 4, 5 years from now, on our starting lineup, you're seeing 4 or 5 guys from Toronto. And right now you have that with Jonathan, and, Richie is in a starting battle with Oro. But in every given day, there's generally at least 1, 2, sometimes 3 players from Toronto that are in our starting lineup. And I just actually think that's going to grow. Some of the talent we have coming up, Jaquil Marshall-Ruddy, he's a 2004. Jaden Nelson is a 2002. We have a really good, strong group of 2000s, led by Rocco Romeo and Noble Okello and Julian Dunn. These are all first-team players right now. And so we're incredibly excited about that. And I think we've actually enlisted a number of local scouts for us now who are actually watching all the Ontario soccer games. And it's helping us identify young kids that we can bring into our academy. We do the partnerships, the affiliates, where you come in and actually have your best players play, each other in this tournament that we've put together with our affiliates, so that we could see who are the best players from London, from Windsor, from Ottawa, that we, maybe it's not practical that they at age 13 or 14 are in our academy. But as they get up to 16, 17, we have a number of players right now that are billeting here in Toronto, staying with other families and playing full-time with Toronto FC Academy. And so that's something I think for your community in London, Ian, and certainly in Windsor and Ottawa, I think as the kids really kind of get up into 10th and 11th and 12th grade, it's something to consider if they are talented enough to stay here in Toronto.
Fantastic. And just a question, obviously everyone on the phone here today, we've got close to 50 online. We're all staying home. You talked about your players, I presume, are staying home. And I guess the difference is they're getting meals delivered to them. And I'm sure everyone here would be more than happy to give you an address. But what are they doing? Are they are they on their own personal fitness regime? Does Vanny have them sticking to a diet, a curriculum, a fitness curriculum? Because certainly within our academy, that's what Ruben and Mike are doing, is to make sure that the young people on the phone, and also the ones who aren't, are staying, keeping their head in the game, keeping their body fit, keeping their body tuned and ready to go as soon as they blow that starting whistle, hopefully sooner rather than later. But at the pro level, how are you managing that group?
You know, we've today I'm making daily calls, as is Ollie, just trying to keep in touch. I spoke to Chris Mavinga today. He unfortunately had a death because of COVID-19 in France, an uncle of his who was very close. That's the only one that's really affected the inner circle here at Toronto FC in terms of our players and our staff. Everyone so far is healthy and feeling good. They do a Zoom session every day. So they get 10:30 every day. They're doing a workout with our strength and conditioning coach, Tom Williams. And he has the group together every day from 10:30, generally till 11:30 or 12 o'clock. And they're running through fitness sessions. And then we send them 2 meals a day, a post-recovery meal, and then, generally some type of dinner. And, it's just important because we want to make sure they get the right nourishment. We've also done it with our USL team. And actually just this past week, Luke Garcia, who's our strength and conditioning coach for our academy, is actually doing Zoom with our academy players now. And so it's been really good to have this app to get everyone together and do a workout. Our staff is actually going to do one on Thursday, which I'm going to participate in. And so it's just trying to, I think, find some normalcy now and get into our own routines. And so I was really pleased when you asked me to talk, because I feel like I've talked the last 2 weeks as much on the phone as possible, but actually doing something like this where there's some interaction and people listening is, I'm really happy that you asked me to participate.
Sounds great. Well, final question. I mean, obviously the big prize is the MLS championship. That's a little bit of a been there, done that. But for you, for all of us here, the big prize is the World Cup. And I think let's not get ahead of ourselves and say we're going to win it, but it certainly would be nice to be there. If you had a prediction looking out over the horizon, how far are we away as a country in being able to A, be there, and B, show our stuff?
Well, and I've told this to John Herdman, like, there is no reason they shouldn't qualify for the 2022 World Cup. Canada is, and I'll give you a little anecdote that I got from my hockey colleague, Brendan Shanahan. So he was saying that the Canadian mindset in hockey is, if they lose to the U.S., it's like a national disaster. Like that is unacceptable for a Canadian hockey player. Yet, and I remember even when I first started with the TFC Academy, when Canada would lose, or it would be, we gave a good game to the U.S. We played a good game against Mexico. And we're really trying to change that mindset with our players. And I think it's really infiltrated into the national team program that, the GTA, especially Toronto, is as big as most cities in North America. And the talent base that we have here is as good as anywhere. And so, we were very proud. We were the first Canadian team in 31 years to win an age group in Dallas Cup. We won 2, U12 and U16. And this past year, our U15s won the USSDA, which is the Development Academy in the United States. And no Canadian team had ever won it before. And I think we're changing the mindset. And I think John Herdman's doing the same thing, in that not qualifying for the World Cup is not acceptable. And it's raising the bar, and you do see, a player like Alphonso Davies who was just emerging in MLS, and now he's playing in one of the biggest teams in the world and is one of the best left-sided players in the world, I believe, right now. And the talent level that's coming up. And so whether they're here, whether they're in Europe, like Alphonso Davies or Jonathan David, I think Canada is going to have a very strong team. And there's a number of players on our team right now, I was telling Richie Laria the other day, he'll be 29 in 2026. You know, he's 25 right now. He's going to be in the prime of his career. And in 2026, we're going to host it here in Canada between ourselves, Montreal, and Edmonton. And, you know, I think we're going to host a number of games here. And I think Canada is going to really make a statement in that World Cup on its home turf.
Fantastic. Well, Bill, I appreciate the time on the phone today, as does everybody on the phone. Everybody out there who's got video, a big round of applause for Bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And again, the best of luck for the balance of the season. We're all looking forward to getting out to a game, hopefully sooner rather than later. And good luck with your Zoom call. Now that you're the expert, we'll leave it with you to show everybody how it's done.
Great. Thank you, Ian.
Great.
And
Thanks,
everyone,
everybody.
please stay safe out there. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.